Hey everybody, Adam Savage here in my cave with a show and tell that I can't believe I haven't shown you up until now. And it's a prop from one of my favorite movies of all time, a prop I never thought I would see an excellent reproduction of until probably about 10 or 12 years ago. And now there's a lot of reproductions of this prop. This is my personal reproduction, and it's the way it came into being is a little bit of a story, and I'm going to tell you that story about my Inigo Montoya sword from The Princess Bride. First thing I'm going to tell you is this is not the sword from the movie. No. That is actually still owned by the studio, and I believe still on display, crossed with the Dread Pirate Robert's sword. And it's because of the fact that it is still on display that I think that we have excellent replicas to choose from now. But the bulk of my sword comes from a replica run, I think from Relic Maker on the RPF. I can't be totally positive. But 12 years or so ago, there was a run on the Replica Props forum of Inigo Montoya swords, and I got in on that run. And I immediately had a tiny issue with the sword that I bought, and that was the blade. The blade, for the swords that I'm really obsessed with, the ones that I really love, it ends up becoming really important to me that the blade has some substance to it. It doesn't have to be a real blade. I mean, my Aragorn sword is an aluminum blade that I actually did the work on. So is my Excalibur. My Boromir sword, I didn't do any of the work on that. That was all Peter Lyon and the Weta Workshop folks. But I have a problem with cheap blades. I have a problem with the standard blades that come in a lot of replica swords. So when I first bought this, the very first thing I did was I threw out the blade. Okay, I didn't throw it out. It's sitting over there somewhere in storage. But I had a blade made for it by a company that made these correct blades. And this is that blade. And it is beautiful. It is sharp. It is so sharp. I've cut myself on it more than once over the last decade. And luckily no one else has, because I tell everyone, be really careful with it. It is shorter than a standard blade in this kind of sword would be. But that's film accurate. The film accurate swords were shorter, and that's probably due to some choreography issues, right? It's probably easier. I think Bob Richardson did the choreography for Princess Bride, same guy that played Darth Vader in Star Wars. And also, actually, I got to double check this name. Hold on. Sorry to make you wait while I do this. Bob Anderson. I don't know why I keep saying Richardson. Bob Anderson. He's the legend that played Darth Vader in New Hope, and choreographed the lightsaber battles, also did them for Princess Bride, also did it for Lord of the Rings. Yeah, Bob Anderson, man, he's the shizzle, and he was around forever. Amazing, amazing fight choreographer. So I'm going to guess that the length of the blade being shorter than a standard sword length blade for this kind of sword is likely due to that, the ease of choreography. But I'm not sure. If you know the real answer, please tell me. Now, I told you there was more of a story than just me buying. It is more of a story. So I bought that run on the RPF, and I liked it. I liked it. I didn't love it. I got the sword blade made, and I put it in, and still didn't quite love it. And it hung around here for a decade. And then Indy Magnoli did a run of the same sword, and I bought one of those. I figured, well, I mean, I was still making the television show, so I had more disposable income, and I was like, I'm just going to get it. And I did. And what I found when I looked at the two swords next to each other is that they were shockingly close. Like really, really excellent work from both parties, the original RPF run and Indy Magnoli. But there were aspects of the two swords that I preferred in one or the other. I thought that the original run basket hilt, this whole arrangement, was lovely, but I thought that some of the jewels were colors that I didn't think were the right colors. I thought Indy Magnoli's jewels were excellent colors, But I thought the basket for his was just a little bit softer. And since I could choose between the two, I chose the one with crisper details. However, the pommel is a case where Indy Magnolia's pommel was much crisper and better lines than the original run on the RPF. So I took that pommel from Indy's and attached it to the... Actually, I ended up having to weld a different rat tail tang onto this blade in order to accommodate Indy Magnolia's pommel here. And then one of the aspects in the movie is that the handle is wrapped in leather, and then the valleys in the handle are filled with a spun gold wire, a twisted gold wire. And that was not in the original RPF run, but it was on Indy's. However, I didn't love Indy's handle as much as I liked the handle on the original RPF run, so I added the gold wire. And in order to accommodate the gold wire, I had to rebuild this little gold ferrule here out of brass, and I did. I added this piece of leather between the grip and the front of the blade. I know there's a little like fleur-de-lis in gold I have to add there. I will at some point. I just haven't gotten around to it. And there's one other key difference between my sword and what my sword could have been. And that is, this is a really rare case, but one in which I feel like I might have made a different call if I was the prop master on Princess Bride. I tend to think that Inigo Montoya's sword from Princess Bride is too shiny and too new looking. Now, I don't denigrate the decision that Rob Reiner and his amazing team, I don't deride the decisions that Rob Reiner and his team made while making one of my favorite movies of all time. I don't deride it. But when I want the experience of holding Inigo Montoya's sword, I want one that looks like it's been weathered. I want one that looks like it's got some history. And when I look at that one that's on display at the studio, and when I look at close-up pictures of it, there's no paint variance. It is literally shiny polished brass and some jewels. And it's just a little too neat and tidy for me. And to be fair, both replicas, the original RPF replica and Indy Magnolia's replicas, followed suit. They were shiny with the jewels. Oh, by the way, I said I liked some of the jewels and not the others. I actually popped out most of them and re-glued them in the pattern that I liked. But back to the actual gold here. So what I did with my sword was, in addition to mixing and matching the various pieces and parts that I liked and modifying them until they were all the form factor I liked, I then took this basket hilt and I weathered the crap out of it using several different methods. I polished it on my polishing wheel, leaving some polishing compound down in the valleys. Then I hit it with some gold rub and buff. Then I hit it with some antique gold rub and buff, and I pulled both of those off. I added a little bit of a black wash and pulled that off. And each of these passes ended up adding a little more detail into the valleys, into the lower spots, and thus bringing into relief the higher spots. See, when something's too shiny, it's almost hard to see it. That's really true. When something is too shiny, it can be difficult to take it in because you're just looking at reflections. So you have to kill some of the reflectivity, in my opinion, for me to be able to see it more clearly. I hope that makes sense. At any rate, after the 10 or 11 years of buying two different swords, having blades made, mixing and matching, weathering, etc., I finally have achieved the Princess Bride, you killed my father's sword of my dreams. And I wanted to show it to you. Yeah. And this is like, you know, I could never have done this as a one-day build. I could never have reached this final achievement as a one-day build. In fact, yeah, like I'm describing in the story, it took over 10 years for me to eventually bring the pieces together. The best part about this is now that it is all together, and that's only been in the last year that I did that. Now that it is all together, I now understand the case that this can live in. I've been wondering how this would travel. I have a scabbard that I've been working on for it. That's fine. Scabbard's neither here nor there. but I want a case. I wanted a case that this travels in, and I understand it now. And so that will be a upcoming one-day build. I will build a proper vessel for my Princess Bride sword. And maybe you're wondering why I don't have a Dread Pirate Robert sword. I haven't gotten around to it. I definitely want one. And when I achieve one, I think I'm totally going to have a blade custom made for that one as well. I like the fact that this is not only a really nicely balanced sword, by the way. I think it balances right about, yeah, I think it balances right about there. Yeah, it feels very light when you pick it up. I like the fact that it is almost a real thing. That's the experience I was looking for. Thank you guys for joining me for this show and tell. I really appreciate it. Yeah, if you have stories about long journeys you've taken to achieve the prop of your dreams or something, I'd like to know about it. Yeah, so tell me in the comments. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time. Oh, one more thing. One more thing. You might have noticed in looking at the camera footage of this that the color value of the gold of India Magnolia's pommel is very different than the color value of the gold of the basket hilt. It's something I take note of each time I pick it up. But I love it. I actually love it. And here's the reason. When you look at objects, when you look at genuine objects that carry narratives that are not necessarily dissimilar from the fictional narrative of this sword, that was a convoluted way of saying this. If you go to the Victoria and Albert Museum in London, one of my favorite museums on the planet, and look at some old weaponry like the wheel lock guns, you will notice that stuff made in what we think of as the olden days, the 19th century and earlier, was way more hand-hewn than you would be led to believe by the cheap brass replicas you can buy of this stuff currently. You would notice up close that oftentimes metals don't match, that their tonalities aren't exactly self-similar, that the hole patterns are totally off. Terry English told me when he made Excalibur armor, when he makes armor in general, he only measures hole patterns by eye because that's what they did. And if you make it too perfect, it actually is a tell. So I like the imperfection of the two different tones. Just wanted to say it before I went. Thanks.